I'm quite humbled to be up here today, and I'm sorry I may get a little choked up, but to be in front of this large group and share some of the things that I've learned and where we're at. I'm going to take just a couple minutes here. I want to show my family, and I think sometimes we forget about our families that got us to where we are, and Pam and I have been married now 38 years, and she's the one that when I'm pissed off at somebody that drags me through it, makes me think about it. The one that got me out of bed and got me rolling in the morning. So I give a lot to her, and we got to tell those people, our spouses and things, that we appreciate what they do. And probably the biggest doghouse I have is I put business a lot of times ahead of family, and I really regret some of that sometimes as I watch my kids grow up. So I asked them to come, and it's been 34 years since you heard me speak. So and my son Tyler and his wife Erica, it's their first time. So I'm just like to thank you. And Tyler, we have a little something now. She would like to have a Porsche Cayenne white, but we're not quite to that part of being able to afford that. So she thinks it's cute. But so Tyler helped me out a little bit, and we got a little something for Pam there today. So thank you. I've been fortunate to be around, as I mentioned, 48 years in the industry, and purchasing SMS in 2002 was something that really intrigued me because I've always been a numbers person. You can't drive anything unless you got data to work with. So I'm going to spend a little time talking about what's happened with sow death loss, Piglet Survival, and grow fin, and kind of what we saw from a database. The positive side, looking at the swine industry, is the last 16 years we've got data on pigs weaned per mated female per year, and the data sets are set up. The red line represents all farms. Started out about 125,000 sows. We're up to about 1.8 million. The top 10% is that top 10% numbers based on pigs weaned per mated female per year, standardized data. And you can kind of see if we look at the all, we started out about 21 pigs. We're up to about 26 and a half. That top 10% started out about 25, and they're up to over 32. So genetics and nutrition and things we've done is we've seen this industry, and we become more productive, like Jason mentioned earlier. One of the things that always intrigued me when we started doing this back in 2005 was the variation or the distribution of the data that you would see in the database. And you can see here is we got sow farms less than 18 pigs weaned per mated female per year. We got sow farms at 34. I actually reset the targets for a farm I worked with the other day at 35. So they're anticipating to be at 35 for this next year. So look at that huge variation. Now, some of these down here in the database or some of the genetic companies have some nucleus farms, multipliers. There's some terminal nucleus farms in there, which are probably some of these numbers. But just look at that huge variation. The top 10% at 32. The average is 26.4. The bottom 30% at 22.28. Almost a 10-pig variation there in production. So when we look at the sow death loss, we go back 15 years with the data that's in there. And you can see, again, the red line represents all farms. The purple line represents top 10%. We all started out about 8.5% back in 2005, about 9.5%. The top 10% farms were quite a bit lower, but they went up for a few years. The all went down. Kind of out here, they were together in about 2006. Then something started to happen to the all industry. And it's just been a gradual intake since about 2010, going up about 0.5% a year to where we're sitting now over 10%. The top 10%, they actually got their numbers to come down less than 6, but something happened about 2015. They started to go up and actually got above 8% in 2018-19. So what's been happening? What has changed as far as what we see happening? Again, look at the distribution. Sow farms at less than 2%. Sow farms as high as 22%. And when we look at the top 10% of those farms, their death loss is about 8.7%. And as we move down and productivity goes down to that bottom 30% at about, is running about 12.36%. So we see that the higher producing farms have figured out how to keep that sow death loss lower, but still we have a number that continues to go up. I was asked one time when I did a meeting, what's the cost of a dead sow? And I know there's some economic matrices out there that are going to be talked about and some modeling and things. So I just put together farmer math. And basically looking at, we had about $320 in the Gilt and development. We had some feed for one lactation. We got a little vaccination. And again, most of the time when these sows die, they got pigs in them. Right during the farrowing process. So there's a dead litter of pigs there that we got to look at. then we lose the cull value of the sow. And I use conservative numbers of 35 cents and 35 bucks on my pigs. I got $1,000. It's probably $1,500 if you looked at economics today. Every time we take a dead sow to the disposal. But I didn't even put in there, consider what's the labor to move those animals, what's the disposal cost, what increase in replacement rate, where we at on the stress of the labor. That guy dragging dead sows out, he's not a happy camper. That's not a good job for him. And what about workers' comp? What about the extra feed and vaccination? Lots of other things that can be put into that model. So it's at least $1,000 every time you move out a dead sow. So I kind of looked at a couple years ago, and I put together some things. I looked at what's really causing this increase. I think it's lack of quality labor for doing the basics of the farm, cleaning and repairs. It's not seeing every sow every day. Quality of the feed and the impact of mycotoxin. I don't even think we begin to understand what mycotoxins are doing to our industry. Expansion of the industry affecting gilt selection availability. Well, we may get her to breed. Send us a couple extras. And no investment in and staffing of on-site gilt development. We got to take our ownership of these gilts at a younger age than a mature animal. Issues with periods of time when we have no animals being brought into the farm, like a PRRS break or a PED break. Increase in feet, leg, and dew claw injuries. Minimal research on the flooring type for loose sow housing. We moved sows into loose sow housing. We didn't know what kind of floor to put them on. We've really not done the research to work on that. Not understanding the financial input of a dead sow, injuries, and early culling. Have you ever shared with your crew out there what it really costs every time we take the sow out to the dead wagon? We can look at another set of data. We broke out the data looking at the size of farms and the death loss. The blue represents top 10% farms. The green represents the bottom 30% farms. And as you see, as the farms get bigger, we see the death loss of the lower producing sow herds, sow farms, is going up. The top 10% of the farms, no matter what size, are the ones that have the lower sow death loss. And one of the things I've seen in the last few years as I do a lot of analyzing and looking at data for producers. So we've seen this shift from a lot of the younger paritied animals dying early. So we put this together and it involved 880 sow farms. We looked at the death loss, and the death loss is the blue, the orange is culling, backwards. The female death loss is the orange, and the culling is the blue. You look at the first 3 litters here, and we look at 40.4% of the culling was P0s through 2s, and 47% of the deaths were P0s through 2s. So we're losing almost half our animals before they get to peak time, that 3rd and 4th litter when we should have them in the farm. Why is that going on? I also looked at reasons. And when you look at farm reasons, you guys just keep adding them. I've seen farms 60, 70, 80 reasons for culling and death loss. How can we get anything out of that? So I put together a data set a couple years ago. We actually looked in this one, we were looking at the deaths being blue, and this one, the green being culls. As you can see, over 25% of our deaths were unknown and other. No reason for them. We looked over here at miscellaneous and other little points in the culling, and it was like 33%. When we looked at our main reason at that time for was injury and lameness, downers, and difficult faring. Prolapses was down on a little ways down on what we were looking at. So why are these animals leaving? So in 2018, we talked with Ken Stalder. He's here today. We talked with Chris Hostetler, Valerie somewhere in here. Valerie worked for us at the time. And we wrote an article talking about standardization of death loss reasons for culling and death loss. We wanted to come down to 6 different categories: disease and health, reproduction, performance, locomotion, intestinal, and other. And basically get it down so we could kind of get to some area we could look at. Then we put sub-reasons underneath each one, ranging from 2 to 6. And John, are you here? John Dean? Is he not here yet? Must not be. Well, I got to thank him. He wrote an article in November 2020 that took those 6 categories that we put together, took the data from about 85,000 sows, looking at death loss over a 10-year period of time, and then he put them out based on those. So it's kind of interesting to look what happened within this 4-farm system. When we look up here over those years, the orange represented reproduction. Actually, death, loss, and reproduction went down. We look down here at death, loss from health. They had a spike in 2015. Something happened. When we look at this dark blue here, that's other. And it continues to be that 25, 30, 35% of the reasons. One was interesting to me was the red. This is lameness. It's called locomotion, which included lameness and injury. Look what's happened to that over time. Actually, from 2011, when they were at 12%, they're 39% out here. So again, that particular way of categorizing them helped us take a big look at what's really going on and what happened in a large system over a 10-year period of time. Again, to us, locomotion and injury, that's an area that needs lots of work. Then we've also looked at time. When do these sows die? Are they dying right at breeding time, during gestation? You know, and I summarized it down. I took a look at this one here. And basically, in a 9-day period of time, from day 115 to day 123, we see 30% of the sow death loss. Right before or right during the farrowing process. So if we're going to concentrate on lowering this, where do we need to be? What do we need to change in our sow farms, pre-farrow, 10 days, 2 weeks before they farrow? Do there need to be a laxative given to them, a transition diet, or a probiotic, or something that prepares this animals for farrowing? And again, think about the number of animals that are dying that are young parities, the P1s, the P2s. Is it something happening before they farrow that's setting them up for the possibility of dying? So again, we got to concentrate on that. Now, sometimes we look at research, and a simple tool that I think a lot of farms need to have on them, a $30 quick read digital thermometer. Everybody in the farrowing house ought to possess one. Anybody that's out in the gestation that's doing health needs to possess one. You know, take the temperature of the sows. The day after she farrows, take her temp. That's the sow that's got the temp that 4 days later you start treating. She hasn't been eaten. Her pigs look like crap. You got to move them somewhere because she probably had a retained pig. If you'd have taken that temperature the day after she farrowed, got some intervention going on that's put together by your veterinarian, we'd have probably saved a sow, and had all those pigs. We didn't have to move somewhere else. So a $30 investment can be something simple to work with. And body condition. We probably won't agree on what ideal body condition is, but we will agree that there's variation. And variation is the thing that bothers us when we walk through barns. As we move to different feeding regimens into sows and pens now, we got different feeding, sows and stanchions. We don't get to control their individual diets like we used to. So what do we got to do in that area? I think as we've seen a lot of turnover of people in our sow barns, it's hard to get those readings and get them right. So I've actually started using several of them calipers now, because we don't have that same person doing that sow conditioning that 2 or 3 or 4 times in gestation from breeding on. We need to have something that's consistent. So I think that's something you need to take a look at. I know the different genetic companies now have actually recalibrated these for what's ideal, fat and thin, and so that you use based on what they would like to see for your numbers. But again, it's something that needs to be done, so body condition is a key factor we need to be working on. And then, is it time for a pedicure? I've never had a manicure. My wife's been telling me I need to go do that with her sometime, or whatever they call those for a guy. But I think it's time. All the other industries looking at the horses, for how many hundreds of years have there been furriers that went around and trimmed up toes, or hoofs, what are they, hoofs, toes on a horse? Or what about the dairy industry? In the last several years, they got people that go around, they put them in a lift, and they go about trimming them. Same thing should happen with pigs. You know, there are lift stations out there. Zenpro currently sells one. Some other people have got them. But when we have dew claws getting ripped off like this, we got dew claws that growing into the bottom of the foot. What do we got to do about that? And yes, that is my butt sticking out there. I trimmed some feet. I got farms that are doing it. When sows go up from the gestation to farrowing house, we note the sows that need a little trim. Most of the time, it's dew claws. Dew claws grow, they get caught in slats, they get ripped off. We treat the sow, and we usually end up euthanizing her. So I think gilt selection, nutrition, and then a pedicure is going to be something that's got to be routine if we're going to work on reducing this lameness and injury that we're starting to see, and especially a lot of the pen gestation barns today. And this is one of my, is Clay Witt or Lent in the group? I got to meet this guy someday. This is probably one of the best slides I found for a long time. This just shows us how complex gilt development and selection is. All these things that interplay in our ability to select a gilt, get her developed, get her bred, and get several litters out of her. I think we got to go back and take this, and we got to look at a lot of these areas here that we haven't even thought about as far as gilt development. So I think that's the key, is we got to get the gilts developed earlier, sooner, and better if we're going to work on this lifetime productivity. We're also going to reduce this death loss. And what about her? I call her the non-compete female. We didn't have any of those when we had gestation stalls. We got them now when we got pens. The gal that's out there, she's beat up, she doesn't want to compete. What are we going to do with her? We probably need to think about how can we eliminate some of these early in the reproductive cycle so we don't have to deal with them later on. And as we could become less and less involved with using crates for our farms, what are we going to do with her? So we've got to recognize her, do something with her, and get her out of your system. So kind of my conclusion on this sow death loss thing is we've got to work on getting skilled, trained, long-term employees in our farms. We've got to control the development of our replacement gilts at an earlier age. Do the basics every day of cleaning and sanitizing, keep repair and maintenance up, make sure every female on the farm gets up and observed every day. And if she's got a problem, she needs timely treatment. We need to have high health status, make sure our vaccines, acclimatization, biosecurity policies are followed every day, and working with quality feeds that support the performance level of the farm. A farm putting out 32 pigs and a farm putting out 22 pigs, there's a different nutritional requirement there. I don't think we understand that, and I don't think we've done a good job of trying to figure that out. That's the sow side. Let's look into the farrowing house now. As we've had more pigs born, as we showed you when we started, what are we going to do to save some of those extra pigs? A few years ago, Mark Ricks was my partner at SMS. We created a thing called Piglet Survival. And we would look at data, and we'd have stillborns on this side and pre-weaning on this side. Then you walk in a barn and, hey, I want to lower my pre-weaning mortality. Well, I can drop it by about 4% if I call about another half a pig a stillborn. So which bucket did the dead pig go in? Okay? So that's why this was created several years ago, is saying, okay, we just take and subtract off stillborn percent, pre-weaning mortality, and we got a piglet survival number. Top 10% again represents red, and you've seen what's happened over we have 11 years of data here. It's gone down. Got more pigs born, not the ability to save them. We looked at the top 10% farms, and they've kind of wiggled around here a little bit. They've had some real big highs up here. And they had a big spurt in the end of 2019. I've yet to figure out why this happened. I've looked at the data, and I cannot figure out why they didn't. But they got back on track in the end of 19 and into the year 2020. But again, they've actually widened this gap here. They've gone to about 84% versus 78%. So the top 10% are saving 6% more of their pigs in the farrowing house than the all average. So what do they know that other people don't know? What are they doing? I broke out the stillborns then and looked at what's happened with stillborns. And again, been going up over the last few years. The top 10% farms have figured out how to save those. They kind of plateaued out a little bit. But they've been able to save more of those stillborn pigs. Look at the distribution of stillborns for female farrowed. Anywhere from units at 0.2 to units at over 2.2. 2 pigs different in the death loss column. So what can we do to work on that? I put this together several years ago. I took it from some of the old PigChamp flow charts and stuff that they had, and I kept adding things to it. And these are all things I think that predispose a pig to being a stillborn pig. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but all these things we got to take a look at, and how can we go about incorporating some of those into lowering stillborn pigs. And a stillborn pig is usually a bigger pig. If we get him out alive, he survives. So what do we got to do to lower that number? And there was a piece that was written a few years ago in Denmark by Dr. Thiel. And basically they were saying, if a sow is eaten within 2 to 3 or 4 hours before she starts farrowing, she will farrow out faster, which will reduce stillborns. I liked the article. I took a look at it, and I actually went to a large farm that I work with, 4,500 sow farm, multiplier for a genetics company at the time, total borns right at 17 pigs. And so we went back and we looked at what was happening the 2 quarters before we introduced that process. In March of 2018, we introduced the process, and I'll talk about it in a second. we were running right at 1.5 stillborn pigs. Starting in March of 18, we started feeding the sows 4 times a day. We fed them at 6 a.m., 9 a.m., 12 p.m., and 3 p.m. We don't have night crew at this place. Somebody's there at about 7:30 or 8 o'clock. Look what happened to stillborns. 0.67, 0.73, 0.73, 0.69. So it wasn't a fluke. We ran it 4 quarters. We ran it for a whole year, and a 4,500 sow unit saying, if we do that, we can drop stillborns, okay? So we said, can we make another move on this? We saw some sows that farrowed after that 3 in the afternoon. We had no overnight people. What could we do to drop the stillborns even more? So we then went to feeding them at basically 6 a.m. again, 10:30 a.m., 12:30 to 3, and then 7:30 to 8 o'clock before that night guy left. Stillborns dropped again. We got them down to under 3%. Just by making a change in how we manage the sow being fed. Now, K-State, I was talking a little bit with them earlier, they tried the same kind of thing, only they went 6 hours apart. They saw no difference in the data. So they went too far. That sow's got to be 3 to 4 hours between those feedings, gives her plenty of energy to get the farrowing process done, so it can reduce stillborn. So those farms that can't get the labor to go overnight, here's a change of just how you handle the sow and feed the sow can reduce stillborns. And what was very interesting to me, I looked at, before this farm started on the program, back before we started in March of 18, here was the stillborns by Parity. We're over 2 pigs on the 5s, almost 2 pigs on the 6s. Look what happened when we changed them over. We saw a higher percent improvement or lowering of stillborns in the older parities than the younger parities. We took these 6, 7s and we got them down to 0.6 of a pig. So it had a bigger effect on the older parities than it did on the younger parities. Let's look at pre-weaning death loss a little bit. We've seen, again, trend line going up, went from about 13% to 15%. The top 10%, they wiggled around a lot, but they've actually had a downward trend line. But again, look at the variation. Farms anywhere from 4% to 25%. Again, just huge variation in what we see. Even with a challenge of PERS or PED, 25% death loss and mortality is a pretty high number. Again, I put together some flow charts several years ago saying, here's all the things that have something to do with pre-weaning mortality. All those things are part of what we got to take a look at, go back and review. And I like some of the comments early on. Maybe something we did a few years ago we got to bring back. Maybe we got to drop something that we tried and didn't work. So we got to start to do some of those things. Go back, start with a clean slate, and maybe say, just add these things in again. Again, we know that if chilled pigs have a tendency to chill out real quick. This is Dr. Ellis at Illinois put together. And again, those pigs under 2 pounds, within 15 minutes, their body temperatures are down to about 92 degrees. By 45 minutes, they're down under 91 degrees. If we threw you in a pond and your temperature went down that far, we'd bring you out as a corpse, not as a live potential animal, okay? So it's amazing that these smaller pigs can handle that, but what can we do to reduce that? Look with these bigger pigs. They only went down to about 95 degrees. So if we've got limited labor in our barn, who do we need to be drying off? Who do we need to be rolling around in a drying agent? It's the small pigs to try to get them alive if we have a labor issue. I think all of them ought to be something done with them, but again, we can concentrate. Colostrum intake. We've talked about it for a long time, and this is one of my favorite slides. When we were back there weaning those 10 pigs, colostrum management was not a problem. You know, our goal is to get about 200 grams in the first 24 hours. Once we saw the number of pigs going up, this little guy out here that get 18 grams of colostrum, we know which bucket we're going to put him in unless we have some intervention to get him some of this colostrum that was over there. We also know when we look at colostrum intake, and again, studies done over the last few years, pigs that got less than 100 grams, and for us folks that don't work in grams, I like it in pounds and ounces. That's 3.5 ounces, okay? So their death loss was about 62 or 63%. If we get 200 grams, so that's 7 to 10 ounces in them in that first 24 hours, we go less than 10%. So what have we looked at as far as colostrum input outtake of our sows? We do split suckling, but what do we got to do to make a better quality product that the sow has available for those pigs to nurse on and more of it to go around when we got 16 pigs? What do we got to do? What do we got to do to help that? We also look at birth weight. We know any of those pigs that are less than 1.3 pounds, we need to be probably euthanizing them because their survival, if we leave them in the crates, is their death loss about 70%. So maybe we need to be doing a little more euthanasia in our farrowing houses and being able to get the quality pigs that we need to be able to lower that pre-weaning death loss. Or challenge our genetic companies. You got us a lot of pigs, we just need bigger ones. You know, we need bigger pigs that come out of those sows. And then the other one is facilities. And that's a study that I kind of ran out of time. It was on my list of things to start to do this year. To start to look at sow housing and square footage, start to look at the farrowing houses again. But this was a study that Valerie and I worked on back a few years ago when she worked with us. And we looked at I just pulled the one out on area. And we just look at area here. It's 24 to 34 square feet up to crates that were 48 square feet. So these are 6 by 8. There are still 4.5 foot crates out there, believe it or not, that are less than 7 feet long. Okay? The light blue here represents number of pigs weaned. We started out down here a little over 10 and a half. Up here we're just about 12.5 pigs. Potential of 2 more pigs weaned just because we changed the danged area of the farrowing crates. So if you're looking at weaning 12, 13, 14 pigs, you're not going to do it in a 4.5 by 7 foot crate. We got to make physical changes in a lot of our facilities that facilitate the production potential we have so we move that number up. A little bit on grow fin. I'm not a big grow fin guy. I haven't done a lot of work in that for a while. Because MetaFarms purchased our company a couple years ago, they sent me some slides and some stuff to look at. And I pulled this one off of an article that they wrote. This has been the mortality in the finishing area for the last 10 years, starting in 2012. And you can see that the yearly averages have been just a little over 4%. It's amazing over that length of time it hasn't changed. They told me in the data sets there's about 10,000 closeouts in each year. It's U.S. farms only. And they've already gone through and done some filtering of the data and taken about a third of the data out from sow farm, from finisher ones that had incomplete data, no feed, things like that would drop them out of the data sets. So again, it's been about 4%. Now, it came up in 2021. Again, I think the PERS now, has had some effect on that finishing area. We're starting to see that happen. We can look at top 10% running, under 2%. The bottom 10% running about 8%, and averages and 9% in this Lexus. So what is the difference in profitability between a farm at 10% of closeout and a closeout that's running at 8%? There's a lot of dollars involved with that. Also, when we start to look at this mortality, I pulled this one up from a nursery, and again represents about 10,000 closeouts in the nursery area for those years. Again, U.S. data that's been filtered. But when are the animals dying? I think sometimes we get over-concerned about the last number, but what happened in that first 2 or 3 weeks? So I just pulled this together, and that 2.5% of the death loss is in the first 3 weeks. So when should we have somebody in the nursery spending a lot more time? It's not out here when we're ready to move them. It's that first 1 to 2 weeks that we need to be spending our time there to reduce the death loss. Why are they dying is important, but again, is somebody there to make sure that that doesn't happen? Same thing on the finishing side. When you look at every 4-week interval here, at the first 4 weeks, we lost 1.4%. We lost another 1.1% in the next 4 weeks. So we're sitting out here at over 3% of the death, almost 3% of the death loss now is incurred in the first 8 weeks. And we're out here at 5% being the total. So again, what happens in that first week has got to be looked at. I think we start to look at attributes and stuff when we look at data. I've always thought that we under-collected data. We can collect it. It's always if we got it, then we can figure out something to do with it. If we don't have it, we can't figure out what the heck to do with it. So I've always been a data nerd as far as trying to get more information. I think when we look at the grow fin area, death loss reasons is important, but again, we got that same problem, too many of them. We got death loss. We need to be looking at the weight of the dead animal and the death loss day. And people. People are the thing that's going to have to make this successful. The people in the barn, the people in this room, what do we got to do? But people is our big problem, and it continues to be an issue. I just throw a bunch of things up there, problems affecting survivability in the swine industry. I could probably put 2 more slides up there that's got some of them on it. I guess, who's going to fix the problems? Is it somebody sitting in this room? Is it other people they work with? I think there's a lot of yous in here that's going to help us get that job done, okay? So the challenge now is take what we know, go back and look at it, pitch out what we're not using right, and create something new that we need to work with. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to spend a little time with you and share my thoughts, and I'll turn it back to you. Thank you very much.